Welcome back to the shop and to the channel. We got another project that I want to get started on. I've been wanting to get started on this for some time now. When I've had to move machines around in the shop, I usually have used a set of 1-inch pipes and just slid them on the pipe. But it does present a bit of a challenge to actually do that. It's not very easy to turn corners or to change direction. But I think it'd be better if I had a proper set of machine skates. I've got this scrap material here, and I picked up a bunch of bearings off of Amazon or eBay, and I think with a little creativity I can turn these 3 chunks of steel into some reasonable representations of some machine skates. Well, per usual, I did a quick drawing in Fusion 360 just to give me some guides on how I want to do this. So I've got the body, some axles, and I'm going to need to make some washers as well. So we can get started on machining the stuff that we need for the body first. I need these holes for the axles, and then there'll be a hole in the center for a pivot plate. To help keep any Mr. Bozos from showing up in the shop, I'm going to use a little bit of layout fluid here and mark out the position of these recesses that I'm going to machine in the sides here for the axles, just to make sure as I'm turning these parts around in the mill that I put all the holes in the right spot. I'll get started here by clamping one of the bodies into the mill vise. And now I'll mount an edge finder into a 3/8 collet in the mill so I can find the front and right edge of this piece of material. I have what used to be a 1-inch end mill in an end mill holder that I'm mounting into the spindle. This is a regrind, and so its true diameter now is only about 922 thousandths, but that number really doesn't matter, and this will be fine. Since I have 3 of these to machine, I'm going to use this mag base as a stop so that when I pull out this piece and reset it to do the other side or the other 2 pieces, I won't have to find any edges again. Well, with it lined up over my marks according to the DRO, I can go ahead and mill this first hole. It's going to end up being about a 1/2 of an inch deep. Now, while I sit here and watch this video and recording this voiceover while editing, I realized I made a mistake here that I'm hoping won't end up causing me problems later on. Well, the first mistake that I made is I set the reference edge as the front edge of this piece, and really it should have been the back side, which is against the fixed jaw. If there's a significant difference in the thickness of these 3 skate bodies, then this hole would not be in the same position in all 3 of them. In my case, it's really not critical, and so this shouldn't be a problem, but I need to keep this in mind for future reference. If I am machining parts that do need to have that level of precision. To clarify what I mean is that the face that is against the movable jaw, the one that's closest to me, is actually going to be the bottom of the machine skate, which means that the axles will be referenced not from the bottom where I'm expecting them to be, but really from the top. With that first hole finished, I'm just going to flip it 180 degrees in order to bore the hole on the opposite corner from the previous one. This eliminates the need for me to have to change my setup at all. I'll do this same process without changing my setup on the other two skate bodies. Well, with the first two set of holes finished in each of the three skate bodies, I can now bore the other two. And this is where I made the second mistake. What I did here is, instead of changing the x-axis offset, I changed the y so that when I flipped the part over, I could machine the other hole. But what I should have done is moved the x-axis. I should have moved the table to the right. That would have ensured that at least the two holes were guaranteed to be in the same horizontal plane. But since I didn't do that, what I did is I used the edge finder to find the back edge of these pieces, which is against the fixed jaw, and redid the offset from that point, which will probably work, but it's still wrong. I won't find out for sure until all of this is assembled and I find that one of these skates is sitting on 3 wheels instead of all 4. The only other bit of machining that I'm going to do in the skate body is drill a hole down the center of the base. This will give me a spot to mount a pivot pin because I intend to have a plate on the top of the skate that can spin. This will make it easier to adjust the direction the skate is going without fear that it'll slide out from underneath whatever it is that I'm moving. Well, this 1/2 inch drill should be stout enough that I'm not going to bother using a spotting drill first or a pilot drill. I'm just going to go for broke and drill it all the way through in one operation. Well, the last bit of work I need to do here on the milling machine is to drill another 1/2 inch hole through the center of these pieces of flat bar. These will be the pivot plates that will sit on top of the skate body. Later, I'll weld in a piece of 1/2 inch round bar into this hole, and that'll be the pivot pin that fits into the hole on the top of the machine skate. Well, moving over here to the lathe, I've got a piece of 1-inch round bar that's going to be the material that I need for the axles on the machine skates. The axles will get welded into each of those original holes that we milled at the beginning. So I need to turn these down to about 922 thousandths in diameter. Well, I have to make 12 of these axles, so I've got some dial indicators here on the lathe that'll give me a little bit of an opportunity to decrease the amount of time that it might take to make these. Well, I need to get the initial diameter down to about that 922 thousandths so I get a fit in the bore on the side of the machine skate. And that dial indicator I have on the back of the compound should reach 0 when I'm at that mark. And that looks like I hit it fairly well. This is going to be somewhat of a loose slip fit. It doesn't need to be a press fit of any kind, but I don't want it too loose either. I'll machine the entire length that I have sticking out here to that first dimension. And now I can come back to the end and I'll face it off. Well, without moving the carriage now, I'll bring in the dial that I have on the bedway and set it to 0 because I need to machine down the end of this 1 inch and 700 thousandths in length, and I need to bring it down to 20 millimeters. So if I have my calculations right, I need to take about 63 to 65 thousandths off of the radius, so about 130 some thousandths off of the diameter to give the right size for the bearings to sit on. So I want these to either be somewhat of a slip fit or maybe a light press fit. Either way, I'll probably use some Loctite to hold them on the shaft. Well, the next operation on the axle is to drill and tap for a 1/4 20 bolt that I'll use to hold the bearings onto the axle securely, so there's no chance that they'll come off when I'm using them. So I'm using a center drill here to give me a start, plus to give me a nice big chamfer for the tap. Next, I have a number 7 drill in the truck, and this is the tap drill size for a 1/4 20. Well, I swapped the number 7 drill for a 1/4 20 spiral flute tap, and I've got the lathe in back gear using a little more anchor lube on the tap, and we'll go ahead and power tap this. Well, the last thing to do now is to cut this to length, and I'm leaving the larger radius at about 3/4 of an inch in length. It's not a critical dimension, so just using a scale to set that. With the lathe still in back gear, using a lot of lubricant, we'll engage the power crossfeed and cut this part off. While the part looks good, we'll go ahead and clean the pip off of the end of it on the belt sander. But other than that, we just have 11 more of these to make. On the front of the skates, I'm going to have a sort of a handle on the front of it that will allow me to hook on to it and spin the skate left or right. That will give me some opportunity to steer whatever it is I'm moving. Well, that handle is going to be mounted on the front with some tabs, which I don't think would be all that easy for me to make. I'm sure that I could do it, but I think it would be a lot easier to go ahead and use a plasma table. I don't have a plasma table, but I have a friend, Doug from Metalworks Machine Shop, who's down in the Dayton, Ohio area. I sent him a CAD file, and he was nice enough to go ahead and whip these out on his plasma table and send them to me. Well, that wraps up all of the machining that I need to do. Everything else from this point is going to be some welding and some assembly. Well, I'll probably TIG weld these axles onto the skate body, and I'll have to pay some attention to make sure they're in there straight. Off camera, I made a dozen of these heavy washers, which I'll use to ensure that the bearings stay put on the axles. I also cut up some pieces of round bar that'll end up being the little steering handles that I'll weld into these tabs and then on the front of each skate. I think that's going to be it for now. We'll wrap this up in the next video. Appreciate you watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you'd like to support the channel in other ways, check the links in the description. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.